Hi, and welcome to another episode of the series Before You Buy, where I look at new games, show real gameplay, and share my first impressions without any unnecessary hype. Today it's Pragmata's turn, and just by what it actually is, this game is quite refreshing because it's not a remake. It's not a sequel. It's not an established series that's just playing it safe again. It's a new IP from Capcom, and that alone doesn't feel all that common these days. At the same time, I don't want to pretend it's some kind of revolution. Pragmata isn't a game that's trying to rewrite gaming history. It's not some gigantic thing people will be talking about for the next 10 years. But you know what? That doesn't matter at all because what Pragmata does, it does well. It's simply an honest, straightforward single-player action game with a distinct sci-fi style that really reminded me of the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 era. The kind of adventure that's linear focused, has a clear gameplay loop, good pacing, and doesn't try to be something it's not. And that's exactly why I enjoyed it. Capcom has been pretty cautious about showing material from this game, so even now I'll stick to a mostly spoiler-free approach. The game itself also works much better if you go into it without knowing all of its moments in advance. The premise is simple. You play as Hugo, a technician and astronaut who arrives on the moon with his crew. Humanity has technological facilities and research bases there where a new element was discovered that basically allows for the infinite creation of precise copies of anything. But when you arrive, something is wrong. The station is empty, something strange is happening, and very quickly everything spirals out of control. Killer robots start appearing everywhere and you find yourself in trouble. By your side appears a small android girl named Diana, and together you try to find out what actually happened and how to contact Earth. It sounds like a classic sci-fi setup, and to a certain extent it really is. But the game sells it well, not just with its world, but also with the way you move through different environments. You walk through sterile corridors of lunar bases, laboratories, factories, mines, and later on, places that are visually more distinctive and impressive. At first, the robots you fight against are fairly ordinary, but as the game progresses, the enemy designs start to get more creative and the game introduces much more imaginative types of opponents. I really enjoyed that. Despite its clear inspirations, Pragmata manages to maintain its own identity. It's still modern sci-fi, but it's not just another generic futuristic game without character. It has its own tone, its own visuals, its own technologies, and most importantly, its own pair of main characters who hold everything together. But what defines the whole game the most is the gameplay. You control Hugo, while Diana literally sits on his back. And this relationship isn't just part of the story, it's directly integrated into the combat. Hugo is the one who moves, jumps, dashes, dodges, and shoots. Diana, on the other hand, handles hacking the enemies. And this system is actually the very core of the game. At first glance, it almost sounds too simple. You target an enemy, a hacking minigame appears on the side of the screen, and during combat you go through a simple pattern to remove the enemy's shield or expose their weak points. Then you start shooting at them until the vulnerability window closes again. And this was exactly the thing I was most worried about. Whether this model wouldn't get old after 2 hours, whether it wouldn't just become a constantly repeated loop of hack shoot, hack shoot. Fortunately it doesn't. And that's mainly because the game really develops this system. Gradually, it adds new options, new nodes that you can activate during hacking, various bonuses like increased damage, stunning, freezing, or overheating the enemy. You can choose which hacking elements you take with you, and the game also introduces different approaches to hacking. More aggressive, faster, more focused on stun and similar effects. So it's not just about simply removing a shield. Gradually, it becomes quite an interesting system that forces you to think even during very action-packed battles. And what's important is that the shooting itself feels good. The weapons have decent feedback. Hit feedback is good most of the time, and the whole thing feels fast-paced. Some weapons are better than others, some feel a bit softer, but most of the arsenal is enjoyable to use. Additionally, the game puts a lot of emphasis on limited ammunition. The main weapon has a limited number of regenerating shots, and special weapons have the classic limited ammo. This means that even though the action is flashy, it still forces you to think a little. And that's exactly what I enjoyed about it. Pragmata isn't a mindless shooter. Even though everything is flying and exploding on the screen, there's still a certain level of tactics involved. You have to keep an eye on your equipment, evaluate when to use which weapon, when to hack more aggressively, and when to leave yourself room to dodge. Later on, you also get more tools. Shotguns, rocket launchers, weapons that slow down or trap enemies, defensive drones, protective shields, or decoys. And the game introduces all of this gradually, so there's always something new coming. Another big plus is the variety of enemies. That's something that has dragged a lot of games down in recent years. They start off well, but after 5 hours you're still fighting the same types of enemies, just in different colors. Fortunately, Pragmata handled this pretty well. You start off with slower robots, then faster models appear, later on much more dangerous types, even almost ninja-like robots, bigger mechanical beasts, and other things that change the rhythm of combat. At first, I had trouble keeping track of everything. Hacking one enemy while another is shooting at me from off-screen wasn't exactly easy, but eventually it clicks. And when it clicks, it really starts to be fun, especially when you unlock the perfect dodge with slow motion, which gives you more time to react. And that ties into another part of the game. Progression. Pragmata may be quite linear, but at the same time, you'll find plenty of hidden spots, optional challenge rooms, and reasons to return to older areas with new abilities. It's not a full-fledged Metroidvania, nor does it try to be, but it gives you enough reasons to explore and collect materials. At checkpoints, you can return to the base, where you spend collected items on upgrades for Hugo's armor, weapons, and Diana's hacking abilities. Along the way, you unlock new nodes, improve equipment efficiency, cooldowns, damage, and so on. There's also another currency that you exchange for bonuses, and the game even has something like a parody of a battle pass or a bingo system where you unlock additional rewards. It didn't feel annoying, more like a slightly tongue-in-cheek sci-fi gimmick. On top of that, the base changes as the game progresses. New stations are added, more upgrade options become available, and most importantly, things related to the characters. For example, you can carry items from the environment that show Diana things about Earth, gradually creating an improvised children's room or play area. Over time, the sterile laboratory turns into a much livelier place. And that's exactly what gives the whole game a surprising amount of charm. Because yes, the story itself is rather simple. It has a few twists, some I saw coming, some I didn't. It's nothing that emotionally destroyed me, but it works. And most importantly, Hugh and Diana work really well. Those two are the core of the whole game. Not because their relationship is extremely complicated, but precisely because a natural bond forms between them and the game doesn't try to make everything grimdark or needlessly overly serious. There's a certain humanity, lightness, and at times even a subtle cuteness to it. And that was refreshing. I like dark stories as much as anyone else, but here I really appreciated that it's not built solely on suffering and a depressive atmosphere. What's more, Diana, as a child character, doesn't come across as annoying, which isn't always easy to achieve. On the contrary, I actually found her quite likable. And Hugh works well as the main character, especially in combination with her. My first playthrough took me about 12 hours, but I could have easily spent more time on it because I didn't collect everything. The challenge rooms were also surprisingly fun. I usually skip similar content in games because it feels like filler, but here I actually enjoyed them, and they reminded me of the old VR missions from Metal Gear, so I was quite happy to come back to them. And that's probably the main point. Pragmata isn't some life-changing experience. It's not a game that would make someone rush out to buy a new console. It's not a new definition of the genre, but it's exactly the kind of honest single-player action game that doesn't come out that often these days. It has a clear direction, well-designed gameplay, a pleasant pace, decent scope, likable characters, and solid progression. And all of that together adds up to more than I originally expected from it. For me, it was honestly a really enjoyable experience, and if you miss that kind of classic, well-crafted sci-fi action-adventure that knows exactly what it wants to be and doesn't try to overwhelm you with 100 extra systems, then Pragmata is definitely worth your attention.